So far, best news of the offseason, the Washington Commanders have reportedly hired 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters as their new general manager. Now, this is a pretty big one. You know, the final two candidates were Ian Cunningham and Adam Peters, which I looked over both of them in one of my videos. I believe it was the video for last. But in my opinion, those two were clearly the top two candidates for the job. Both of them would have made really good choices. But in the end, they went with Peters, who, in my opinion, definitely was the superior candidate. You know, just a little rundown of some of the stuff that he's been a part of since joining the NFL. Since joining the Niners as VP of Player Personnel in 2017, he's had his hand in drafting 5 first-team All-Pros with Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Talonia Hufanga. I'm sorry if I completely murdered that name. But his NFL job history includes stints with the Patriots as a scout from 03 to 08, with the Broncos as a scout, an assistant of college scouting, a director of college scouting, and then with the Niners as VP of Player Personnel, and then as assistant GM. And since he's been in the NFL, he's been a part of 3 Super Bowl winning teams, 6 conference championships, 13 divisional titles. Now, make no mistake about it, this is a big hire for Washington. You know, this is the kind of guy that, Daniel Snyder never really was able to put his hands on for a couple different reasons. One, because Snyder always wanted to be the one that was kind of, at some point in time, he wanted to have some sort of control over what was going to happen. And guys like this, they don't like meddlesome owners. They like to have full control and final say. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that the owners don't have to come in at the end and say, oh, yeah, he knows what he's doing and sign off on something. That's normal. But this is something that a lot of fans of the Burgundy and Gold have not seen because they're just simply too young to have lived in an era with an actual general manager. I was trying to think about it a little while ago. I guess it's been since Charlie Casserly since we've really had a legitimate guy in that front office that wasn't, that didn't have Daniel Snyder's hand shoved up his ass. I really like this hire. I talked about this, like I said, a couple videos back, and I really looked at this guy and thought in my mind, it'd be really nice if we could somehow swing it where we could get the best GM candidate to come to Washington and take the job. I mean, it's a big thing to take on, man. I mean, let's just be honest for a second. There's a whole lot of things going on. I think he has 49 players under contract. I believe they have close to $90 million in salary cap space. That seems like an awful lot when you look at it on paper, but then you have to bring in a team too. The good part about it is the draft picks they have, and I think it's 5 within the first 100. These are things that entice a guy, a young up-and-coming guy who's made his rounds as far as, putting in the work over there with San Francisco, and now is getting his opportunity as well. And make no qualms about it. This guy wants to prove himself, and get out from underneath the shadow of just being an assistant. Over there in San Francisco, they've been hype about this guy and talking about him now for a couple years. In all reality, more than likely, he's been the guy that's been in control of their GM, reins, so to speak, as it is. I'm actually quite surprised that they didn't elevate someone and make him the GM to try to keep him. I'm really surprised they didn't. But in this situation, thankfully, their loss is our franchise's gain. And now he inherits the job of hiring the next coach of the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders, if you would. This football franchise needs a whole new approach. It needs a fresh mind in that position. So I'm hoping that we continue to see the youth push here and see them target, one of the better young coaches. If you take a look at some of the candidates that they've requested interviews with, Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson is the #1 person pretty much on everybody's list that's hiring a head coach. Also, Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, Ravens associate head coach and defensive line coach Anthony Weaver, who they actually did a preliminary Zoom interview with, whatever you want to be, yesterday. Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, who actually, to me, is a really solid candidate, even though I don't think that a lot of people really know a whole lot about him. A guy that's popped up on everybody's radar the last few years, Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, who I expect to take that Seattle job, by the way. Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris, whose name's been popping up a lot more in talks around the league. And I heard Jim Harbaugh's name thrown around, and then, some comments that Josh Harris made me think that BnG might also be considered for the job as well. And out of those guys, obviously Ben Johnson would be the big haul, Also, another guy that's not mentioned here, Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator from the Houston Texans, is another guy that's on their list. And he is a guy that's actually was on that Shanahan coached team in 2013 that has all of those other coaches, that 4 or 5 different coaches, 3 or 4 of them now are head coaches. But he was a part of that coaching regime or whatever as well. And he should be viewed as a top candidate for that head coaching job as well. To me, Slowick is kind of like a good wild card in the situation, considering the fact that he's coming from the Shanahan system. He's a guy that I believe Peters already knows. It'll be interesting to see how that all transpires and comes together. Personally, I would like it to come down between Johnson, Slowick, and Mike McDonald, the Ravens DC. I know there's a lot of people out there that would like to see Jim Harbaugh take the job. I just personally am not sure that Harbaugh would be comfortable, A, coming in and not being in complete control, and B, having to answer to a couple of different people. I'm not certain that that's really all that great of a situation for Jim Harbaugh, especially coming from Michigan, where it's more of a college. The college atmosphere is definitely more of a coach-centric. The coach tells everybody what to do. And I feel like if he's going to come back to coaching the NFL, he's going to look for power. He's going to want at least to be able to bring home his groceries. I don't really see him, viewing a job. I mean, obviously the job in DC is obviously one that he would look at and be intrigued about because his brother's right down the Beltway, and the cap room and the situation. It's an enticing job at this point. So I could see where he might be interested. I'm just not sure that he fits. I know already that there's a ton of fans that don't like the guy, so believe me, I already know that. Another wild card in there is Raheem Morris. I've heard several people talk about how people in league circles believe that he's ready for another head coaching job. If you don't remember, he got tapped real early in his career and was a head coach down in, I believe it was Tampa Bay, before he was really ready to be a head coach. Raheem Morris has done different things in different places. I've seen him coach offensive spots and defensive spots. Very versatile, and he knows his stuff. I know a lot of people are hyped up on the idea of having a coach that's more of an offensive-minded coach, calls his own plays. I know that's one thing that a lot of people want to see. And in the NFL, it is, all about putting points on the board. So it'll be interesting to see which direction that Peters heads in next. It feels good just to be able to say that. This is a win for the franchise. This is a win for the fan base. This is a win for us moving forward. Not only will this benefit the football team long range and long term, and the franchise long term, this will benefit us as fans long term. The whole organization needs firm structure, and this guy's going to bring it. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments. How do you guys like this hire? I know not everybody out there was really a fan of his, when I was talking about it on Facebook. Which, by the way, if you're not following me over on Facebook yet, you need to make sure you're doing it. By the way, if you're not already following me over on Facebook, you need to make sure you follow the Burgundy and Gold. It's facebook.com/HTTR for life. Y'all take it easy. Peace.